continuing onward here with the BOA Audio Baseball Special. We've got our resident Yankee fan here now for the special. We're going to get all thoughts on all the big changes in the Yankees and all that fun stuff from our next guest. He is the author of the outstanding book, UFOs and the National Security State, Volume 1. I hope we're not going to pester him about Volume 2 here, but maybe we'll find it. He's probably tired of hearing about it. But he is, of course, the outstanding Richard Dolan. Everybody loves Rich Dolan. I get more feedback from his interviews still today after 2 years since he's been on the show. I still get people saying, when are you going to get Rich Dolan back? Yeah, I love that interview with Rich Dolan, putting it on lists of favorite episodes and stuff. So it's great to have him back and talk baseball with him. And I didn't know he was a big baseball fan until I met him at the Crash Retrieval Conference, and we talked a little baseball there at the banquet, so it was a fun time. Rich, welcome back to the program. Thanks for being a part of the baseball special.
Thank you, Tim. Boy, this is fun. I've never done a baseball interview before.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the baseball talk, let's just, update folks on what you've been up to since the last time we heard from you. We did a little shortcut interview at the Crash Conference, November of 06, so it's been a while. So
well, I've been actually spent the last few months today, in fact, writing my next book, the second volume of my study, UFOs and the National Security State. I've got about 350, 400 pages done. I'm happy with it. I like the way it reads, and there will be a third volume, which will actually be a 3-volume history when it's finished. Big fat study. So, but this year, I think, should be the year that the second volume comes out, which will go right up to 1991. And I'm excited about it. Actually, I'm very happy with the research, the writing. It's really coming together in a way that I'm pleased with.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The tumultuous 80s. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the UFO world in the 80s.
Yes, exactly.
Now let's talk baseball here. You revealed to me that you are a Yankee fan.
I am indeed. Listen, I ask people not to hold it against me. I grew up as a Yankee fan. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and grew up mostly on Long Island. So that's New York Yankees, New York Mets territory. My grandfather was a lifelong hardcore New York Yankees fan who had actually been, I'm not kidding, at Lou Gehrig Day in 1939 when Lou Gehrig gave his speech, The Luckiest Man on the Face of the Earth. My grandfather was there. When I was a kid, he used to take me and two of my cousins to Yankee Stadium all the time. I touched Mickey Mantle when I was 11 years old at Old Timers Day. So, look, man, there's no way that I could ever not be a Yankees fan.
Hey,
it can't happen.
That's fine. Yeah, that's cool.
I know you're a Red Sox fan. That's why.
I know. Well, it's like a bizarro version of me, so it's all good. Well, let's talk about the changes in the Yankees in the last over the off season here. Joe Torre's out. Joe Girardi's in. What do you think about that change?
I'm very excited about the way the Yankees are looking this year. And I was always a big fan of Torre. He was manager of the Yankees for 12 years, and Torre is the only manager in my memory as a baseball fan in which the Yankees had a sane, stable manager who you didn't think was going to have a freak-out moment, like Billy Martin. I mean, he's the anti-Billy Martin. And the other thing about Torre, of course, is that as soon as he came in, the Yankees just won and won and won and won and won. Now, they actually won the year before he came in when they had, still had Buck Showalter there. But Torre, he's the guy who brought in, we had Rivera with Torre, and we had everything came together. Jeter. And I think Joe Torre partly was lucky, but partly also, I think, brought a certain attitude to the Yankee team that they really needed, and it was great for them. The problem with Torre in the last few years is that he really was becoming a very inflexible manager, in my opinion. Did not know how to use a bullpen or even a pitching staff very well. Which started really to drive me crazy, and just I think it was time to go. I personally blame him for some of the screw-ups that the Yankees had in the postseason. So the fact is, I think it was time for Joe Torre to go. And whether or not Girardi is actually going to be a better manager, I don't know. I was kind of bemused by Girardi's little outburst this spring training with the Tampa Bay Devil Rays over the I don't know if anyone followed this, but there was a big fight. Mm-hmm. And I think Girardi just acted like a little baby. So that's not an improvement. but that's peripheral. What I really want to see is if Girardi's willing to use young ball players. This was Torre's biggest problem, in my opinion. If you were under 25 years old, it's like he didn't want to use you. And he had this attachment to washed up guys who were 35, 38 years old trying to because they were good 10 years ago. And I want to see some young players. So, in fact, I think the thing that will make the Yankees exciting this year is they got 3 young, new pitchers that I think have a very good chance of being the foundation for a great staff in the years to come. They got Philip Hughes, who I think is just fabulous. Jabba Chamberlain, who blew everyone away when he made his debut last summer. And Ian Kennedy, who is maybe not a number 1 starter, but looks like a darn good pitcher.
Yeah.
And on top of the guys they have, Chen Ming Wang and Andy Pettit, I think that's going to fill out a pretty good rotation.
Yeah, they're formidable this year. I was saying to the other guests, because they're both Red Sox fans, Lauren Coleman and Paul Kimball. I'm getting a little nervous here about them. They got a little more of a swagger back than they have.
Well, this is what you Red Sox people are always afraid of the Yankees. I mean, it doesn't matter how good the Red Sox are, and the Red Sox are great, but they're always afraid of the Yankee fans. By the way, I want to point out, I predicted the Red Sox were going to win the World Series. I was very proud of this. When they hired Bill James to come into their front office. And for some people listening, if they are followers of what is known as sabermetrics in baseball, I'm a big sabermetrician in baseball. In other words, it's the study of baseball statistics in, let's say, a much more sophisticated way than traditionally had been the case. Bill James is the guy who really created modern baseball sabermetrics, and he was brought on to the Red Sox front office, I think, in 2001 or 2002, around then. And when that happened, I said to some friends of mine, within 5 years, the Red Sox are going to win the World Series. They're going to reverse the curse. And they did. And I think in a large part is because they really have put together, very intelligently put together baseball teams every single year, and focusing on on-base percentage, which is really one of the things you do with contemporary understanding baseball stats, because on base is what matters. It's not your batting average. I always like the way the Red Sox are put together every year, and they have been a very, very top-notch team, for a few years now.
Yeah, it's been an exciting few years here. I suppose with your appreciation of the young pitchers, then I guess you're glad that they didn't go through the Johan Santana trade.
Oh yes, I was very happy about that. Yeah, I didn't. Santana's phenomenal, but he's also, you never know with a guy like, he could be phenomenal for another 10 years, but he also could be peaking now. With pitchers, especially a guy who gets a lot of innings like Santana, you never know. And then, of course, you're going to pay so much money for a guy like this, and you're going to mortgage, other aspects of your team. And the Yankees, they've got a good team in certain ways, but they've got some patches they could fill. They've got a big hole at first base, it looks like. You could always expect a turnaround from Giambi, but then again, you might not. Jason Giambi might just be done. He hasn't hit really well in quite some time now, and he's not even getting on base in terms of walks. So, and then there's Jeter at shortstop, who I think defensively is in danger of becoming a serious liability. There are people who believe he's already a serious liability. And that's not going to improve when you're, 34 years old playing shortstop. So they're going to have to do a few things to keep it fresh. They're going to move people around.
Yeah. What about the tenuous relationship between Alex Rodriguez and the Yankee fans and stuff like that? Especially, it seemed like even worse after he left the team and came back this year in the offseason and all that stuff.
Well, I'm an A-Rod fan. I think that he is absolutely all around the best baseball player, most talented player in the game, the best impact player. Yankee fans didn't like Mickey Mantle throughout most of the 1950s, so this is what they do. Alex Rodriguez is not a guy that I ever would expect to meet personally, so I don't know, but from the things that I hear about him, he seems to be a kind of a sensitive soul, and occasionally dealing with a rough New York crowd, or even a tough, Boston, equally tough crowd, I think. When there's all that pressure to be Superman, sometimes I think it gets him. I think there were times during the season when it affected his performance. It sort of looked like it.
Yeah.
But, no, I got to think that a player like that is beyond, really truly worrying about what what the fans think. to go out and play your best because fans are never going to be satisfied.
And you were saying you went to the Yankee Stadium a lot as a kid. Are you saddened that they're going to be tearing it down and opening up the new stadium? What do you think of that?
No, I don't have a strong opinion about this. I haven't gone to a major league game in a long, long time. In fact, I probably would have slipped right out of it had it not been for the fact that I have a father-in-law who's a professional Yankee hater, and so we were, and really we were like Archie Bunker and Meathead for years and years. So the only thing we could really talk about would be baseball, and that kind of kept me going with baseball. And so I've had this resurgence in the last a little more than a decade now. But I don't have. I think the old Yankee Stadium is certainly in need of renovation. I don't like the fact that cities are being forced to pay the tax bill for these stadiums. I mean, that bugs me. That's everywhere you go. I mean, cities are basically held at gunpoint by the teams and said, here, make people pay for this. It wasn't like that in the earlier years, of course, where the teams are responsible for building their own stadiums. And I think let's be capitalist here, okay? It is not my job or your job to fund, to put out public funds for the sports stadium. I don't believe that. But that's the way it's gone. So.
But you have no nostalgic longing for them to keep the stadium going like we have here in Boston.
No, give me a break. Now, well, I do have nostalgia for baseball. I play 19th century baseball to this day. This is my 6th, 7th year now. I'm 45 years old, Tim. The body gets creaky, let me tell you, it does. But I still go out and I play 19th century baseball at a local museum as an exhibition league, and we play 25, 30 games a year. The greatest day in my life wasn't any UFO-related thing. It was the day that I pitched a complete game shutout championship game, I'm not kidding you, in 2004 against a team from Boston. To win a 5-game tournament. My team, out of 20, 25 teams competed, we won. And I pitched 3 of our 5 games, including the final championship game. Oh.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the difference in the rules and what that's like, actually, because I've seen some clips of that, but a lot of people probably haven't.
Yeah, it's called vintage baseball, and anyone who's listening, you could probably do a very quick search on vintage baseball. There's a lot of teams out there now that do this. Baseball, as many people realize, evolved over a long, long period of time. And in in the 19th century here in this country, there was lots and lots of variations of what would become baseball. In the version we play, which is in early 1860s, there are no gloves, of course. Baseball gloves had not been developed or invented. The pitching is underhand, so it looks a little bit like softball. You have bases that are 90 feet apart, though. You have an outfield that's a standard size outfield. So, you could watch the game and there's 3 outs. I mean, all of that is pretty much the way it is today. Walks, there were no bases on balls. That rule evolved through the 1870s and 1880s until finally 4 pitches out of the strike zone would be a walk. But in our version, you have an umpire who will basically just have the pitcher, you got to lay that ball in there so that the striker, the batter, can strike at the ball. And the umpire would not even call balls and strikes unless he felt that the pitcher or the batsman was not offering at appropriate, baseballs.
Huh.
So, but for all of that, the games move along very quickly. Like a typical 9-inning game will take about 90 minutes.
And what kind of bats do you guys use?
We try to be authentic about it. The handles are wider than contemporary bats. There's no whip-handled bat like what you really get today. In other words, what players do in modern times is you have as thin a handle as possible, because what that does is it increases your bat speed. You can whip around the bat much faster. But this was not done at all in the 19th century. I mean, this has not really been understood. The modern player who revolutionized that, incidentally, was Ernie Banks, who came up as a fairly light-hitting shortstop in the 50s and then went with a whip-handled bat and started hitting like 40 home runs a year in the 50s. But our bats, the handles are thicker. And there's all kinds of weird designs painted in weird ways, and they get kind of funky with it. I don't know how authentic some of that is, but it looks good to me.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. Yeah, I've seen some clips of it. Like I was telling you, they did like a Conan O'Brien thing where he played for a team And they did a little skit for it. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Cool.
If I can find it on YouTube, I'll send you a link or something.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Vintage baseball is a great game, and I've really come to love it at least as much, maybe more in a lot of ways, in the modern game, which I still enjoy. But there's a certain beauty about the field that we play on. We have this gorgeous field. It's a true field of dreams, I must say. It's at a place called the Genesee Country Museum, which is in upstate New York. And, I mean, we've played for spectators, many as 1,000 people or more at times have come to watch our game.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes it's like 100 or 50. But, yeah, it's fun.
Sounds like a good time. Back on the Yankees here, what about Big Hank Steinbrenner? He's kind of emerged as the new
yes, he has. Yes.
voice.
Well, George Steinbrenner's, I think it was very evident that he had not been very well for the last couple of years, so I guess it was inevitable. I'm just happy that he didn't want to pull the trigger on the Santana deal. I mean, this is something that I could have seen George wanting to have done.
Yeah.
Which is sacrifice the youth to get a big-name star. Maybe some of the credit for influencing Hank Steinbrenner might be Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager. I suspect that he has the impression that I get with Cashman is that he wants to hang on to the youth. And so if Hank Steinbrenner is willing to listen to what I think is a very good general manager, then so much the better for the Yanks.
One subject that we really talked about a lot in the other two previous interviews, but I purposely sort of held it off till now just so we didn't beat the dead horse, was the Mitchell report and all the controversy that came out of that.
Right.
I'm sure, being someone who's interested in politics and all that kind of thing, I'm sure it piqued your interest too with the congressional hearings and everything. What do you think?
Absolutely opposed to any involvement by the federal government in baseball. I mean, honestly, the U.S. government has no business, zero business getting involved in investigating steroids. None. Why? I mean, what is the point here? What it has done is it's going to turn people like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens literally into criminals, okay? Mm-hmm. And this is far, far out of control. It's one thing, I mean, it's not that anyone supports the use of steroids. I think everyone pretty much opposes what, steroids represents. It represents cheating. Okay. Having said that, everyone knows that steroid use, whether it's HGH or whatever other substances are out there, human growth hormone or whatever, is extremely widespread. All right, the Mitchell report, in my opinion, I'm not accusing Senator Mitchell of bias here, but it does look very heavily geared toward former Yankee players.
Yeah.
And from my perspective. And there's no way you're going to convince me that that's an accurate proportion in terms of steroid abusers, that, most of them are former Yankee players. It just doesn't seem very credible to me. So I think that there is a legitimate argument that some of the Yankee fans have made on the blogs and out there that, not that they're accusing him of anything, but that it really doesn't look objective. And then to get a guy like Roger Clemens, who, I feel bad for Roger Clemens, to tell you the truth. I mean, I honestly really do. Okay? I think, like most people think, that he's probably lying through his teeth about it. But this is like with Bill Clinton when he was accused of smoking weed.
Yeah.
Or having the affair. I mean, here's Hillary 5 feet away from him. I mean, who's going to say to the world, oh yeah, I had carnal relations with this other woman? I mean, no one's going to say that. And it's the same with Clemens now. Clemens has just put together the most amazing Hall of Fame pitching career of modern times. I mean, better than Tom Seaver, who was the guy that I grew up idolizing as a pitcher. And Clemens was better than that. I mean, he really was. And so now, he doesn't want to admit this. And so he's been forced into a position of lying, and that's bad enough. But now what makes it worse is that because the federal government is involved, it's really going to put him at risk of more serious consequences, i.e. jail time. And the same with Barry Bonds, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, Bonds, and this is just, it's not right. We're living in such a time of overbearing government, micromanagement of our personal lives. And I just want to say, get the hell out of my life, guys.
Yeah.
Get out of their life. Leave these guys alone. Leave Major League Baseball out of it. Out of it. There is no business that any central government has in putting baseball players to prison over steroids. And in particular because whatever crime they may have committed, I mean, it's not like we're lying about having committed a murder.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're lying about having taken steroids to break some baseball records, in which, by the way, let's be upfront about it, there is so much pressure on these guys to do this. And I don't buy the argument that some have made that, well, I can understand a minor league player taking steroids to try to make it into the major leagues, but these guys are at the top of their game. They have no excuse. That's baloney, okay? Because no matter how good you are, there's always some other guy who's going to try to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And these athletes are world-class professional athletes. They take a lot of pride in what they are. They want to be the best. And they know that other guys who are just about at their level are taking them. And their attitude, and we know that this was with Barry Bonds when Mark McGwire broke all his records, and Bonds is thinking, I'm better than that guy. How come he's getting all the glory and I'm here in the decline phase of my career?
Yeah.
So he starts juicing up. And then plus there's money involved. Even, especially for the big names like Clemens and Bonds, because I mean Clemens made $20 million in playing half the season last year. Good grief. You think there's not a financial incentive? So there's so much money involved in baseball, in these professional sports, that you just know that any athlete is going to have a massive amount of incentive to take whatever he can take to be at the top level of competing. And we've got to figure out a way in professional sports to bring some rationality into how we deal with this. It's like we're still the puritanical society we were 300 years ago when we came over on the Mayflower. I mean, we've got these hypocritical attitudes like, this is right, that's wrong, 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 wrong. Okay, and you let it go, because when you have such a strong moral outrage, human beings are human beings. There's always going to be people who break the rules, and you just kind of let it go until then there's a reaction, and then you enforce all those rules. And they're overreacting.
Yeah.
And it saddens me, and I just think it's I don't know what to do about HGH. I think at this point, until you can test for it, you just have to let it be legal. I can't see how fair it is to make it illegal when you can't test for it.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like the only
if you can find a way to test for it, then sure, whatever, ban it. But for right now, I mean, I don't know what they can do.
Yeah, they're in a bind there on that one. Do you think Bonds and Clemens, do you think they're done now? Do you think they're going to make a comeback, or do you think they're all done?
Oh, I cannot possibly imagine Roger Clemens taking to the field. Who's going to want to take Roger Clemens at this point? And Barry Bonds, it's not only just taking them on public relations grounds, but financially. There aren't that many teams that could afford a guy like Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
Who really can't play defense at this point in his career. So, I mean, you can't put this guy in the outfield. I'm sorry, he just can't. He can't play, and he doesn't seem to be able to play first base. So he's got to go to an American League team as a DH. If you sign him, he's going to want $15-20 million, I assume. And who's going to be able to pay that? Well, there's only a few teams. Maybe Boston, maybe the Yankees, a couple of other teams out there. So it's the same with Clemens. You've got a very expensive player, and you have to wonder about the value you're going to get in return now at the age that they're at. So I would think that they're done.
Piggybacking on that question now, the Hall of Fame, do you think we've already seen sort of the backlash with Mark McGwire, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Palmeiro and stuff. What about these two guys? How do you think they're going to fare when the ballot comes around with their names on it for the Hall of Fame?
I think for right now, there's no way. I don't see either going in. It's an amazing thing to say this. I mean, think about it. Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens were both, forget steroids, the best players. Bonds was the best position player of the 1990s. Absolutely no question about it. No question about it. And Roger Clemens, if you take the period, say, from 1985 to 1995, and he was absolutely not juicing during any of that, was Major League Baseball's best pitcher. And both of these guys, they're not going to be in the Hall of Fame because of how screwed up our society is. I mean, really, that's what it is. American society has gotten to be so screwed up. Its whole sports ethos is so completely whacked, as my son's friends now say, that I'm learning the lingo. My son is 11. He's almost 12. And anyway, it's whack, man. It's whack. Not whacked. There's no ED at the end. It's just whack. These guys are going to pay the price because they're competing. The only thing that might change it, because social attitudes do change, and I imagine that by the time they're getting old and decrepit, there may be a kind of reaction against the idiocy of our current era. Because really, if I were voting, I would vote both of them in, because they both deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. And I have no problem saying that. And the other, Palmeiro, in my opinion, I would not vote in. Because in my opinion, Rafael Palmeiro was not a great player until he started juicing. It was very obvious with him. Not so with Bonds and Clemens. They were both just great. And so, I mean, we're not voting in Hall of Famers on the basis of how, what a nice citizen they are.
Yeah.
We're voting them in because they were great at what they did, I assume.
Looking at this year's playoffs now, it's time for the predictions part of the program here. We're going to hear predictions from everybody, so we'll see how you fare, and I'll be posting all the predictions at the after I air the episode. So I'll run down the categories here. It's just the divisions and the league championships and the World Series championships. So I'll start here with the American League East.
I predict Yankees over Red Sox. Yankees first, Red Sox second place.
Okay. American League Central.
God. Jesus, man. I'm trying to think. I'll say Minnesota because I always like them.
Wow, all right.
I'm a perennial Minnesota Twins fan.
Okay.
Believe it or not, they're my central team out there.
They seem to keep selling off all their
Yeah, but they're put together well. They've got good leadership out there. The Twins always find a way to surprise, so I'm just going to go out on a limb there and go for the Twins.
All right, sounds good. How about the American League West?
It's got to be the Angels. I have to say Los Angeles Angels.
All right, and the wild card?
Boston.
All right, sounds good. So no playoff hopes here for Detroit or Cleveland. That's surprising, but
Detroit needs pitching.
Yeah,
in my opinion, Detroit's got a great looking offense, and they could be surprising. But I'm going to say Angels, Twins, Yankees, Red Sox. And realistically, I could see the Red Sox in first place, but I just can't on good conscience do that. You have to understand.
There you go. That's fine.
I'm going with the Yankees over the Sox.
I'll have the same argument when I do my picks.
Right.
All right. Now the National League East. What do you think?
I'm going with Mets.
Okay.
I think that the Mets are they have been ready for a number of years. They look good. The Phillies also, at least they were good, pretty good last year, but I like the Mets, and I think they're going to go in. Maybe the Braves will surprise, but New York Mets in the East.
All right, National League Central.
Who cares? I'll say the Cubs. Cubbies.
Okay. Yeah, the National League Cellar, as they like to call it. And the hotly contested National League West.
I'm going to hope and maybe think that the Dodgers might go in.
Okay. And the wild card for the National League.
I don't know. I'm not that good at this, Tim. I'm going to say Padres.
Padres?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Take it back.
Okay.
Phillies.
Wow. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, Phillies.
And who'll be facing off in the World Series? The American League and the National League champions. Who do you see?
Yanks, baby. Yankees, led by the young stud Phillip Hughes, who's going to pitch the first game of the World Series, and it's going to be against the Mets. We're going to have a Subway Series in New York in 2008. You heard it here first.
Wow, awesome, good stuff. And who's going to
win in 6 games?
And who is that?
Yankees will win.
So
of course.
You're picking the Yankees to win the World Series.
They're going to beat the Mets in 6 games this year in the World Series.
All right, sounds good. There you go. Those are the predictions. The pained predictions from Richard Dolan. I'm going to have to keep all those sighs in the broadcast.
I'm going to be afraid to hear this in October.
Well,
you're going to send me an MP3 and you're going to have a clip, and these are, my really sucky predictions.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, to look at all the different predictions from the people and see how it shakes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty much it for the baseball talk. What do you have coming up? Anything you want to plug? Any appearances or, any good stuff that you want to talk about?
I've actually, if I can slip into the UFO mode again, I've been, as I said, working very hard at my next book. I'm doing a presentation at the X Conference run by Stephen Bassett, which will be in the Gaithersburg, Maryland Hilton, not too far from Washington, D.C., and I have reason to think that can be a very interesting conference. He's got some insiders, government insiders, members of the so-called aviary. They're going to be speaking there. I'll be talking about a variation of exopolitics in a new key, is I think what I'm going to probably call it. I'm not someone who's really done a lot of talk about so-called exopolitics. I've really held it at arm's length for many, many years, but I've been thinking about the implications of dealing with, let's say, them, if there are others on this world who are hanging out here, and I believe that is the case. What does it mean for us as a society to be dealing with them in an open way if that ever happens? And I have a feeling the reason that I'm a little more distant from a lot of the people who talk about exopolitics is that I have a very different perspective, I think, on what that means. And so I think I'll be talking about that next month in Gaithersburg. In short, I don't have a particularly optimistic opinion about our ability to deal with the reality of non-humans on this planet. I think that we're not really ready to do so. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to disclose the truth, because I'm a believer until the day I die in the value of truth over falsehood. But we're dealing with a very one thing that I've has occurred to me when I think about the interaction of human beings with this very bizarre reality of non-human intelligence here, is that we don't deal with them on terms of equality in any way. And so if we're going to try to establish relations, as some people in the exopolitics camp want to do, it's not clear to me how we're going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I've got a few other conferences that are scheduled. I'll be speaking in McMinnville, Oregon, in May. This is all on my website at keyholepublishing.com.
There you go.
So you can just go check that out. And then I'll be in San Jose at the Conspiracy Conference in June. I'll be comparing UFO conspiracy theories with 9/11 conspiracy theories. There aren't that many UFO researchers who deal with 9/11, and there are absolutely no 9/11 researchers, maybe other than Jim Mars, who deals with UFOs.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in both of those, and I'll be talking at those in San Jose. I'll be in Roswell in July for the annual summer conference they have there, and there may be a couple of other places.
Awesome. And people can find all those dates and stuff and the information at keyholepublishing.com. That's your website.
That's correct. That's my website, so go check it out. I haven't been updating this website with new writing by myself for a long time, and for anyone who's been, a few people mention this to me from time to time, and all I can say is, look, I'm sorry. I'm trying to finish my book. I don't really want to do articles or blogs or anything like that. There's a lot of things that I have opinions on that I'd be happy to chat about, but all of that takes time away from my book. I want to get that done.
Exactly, yeah. And everyone's pressuring you to finish the book, so I can imagine that you just want to hurry up and finish it up now at this point.
That is all I want to do.
Yeah. Well, Rich, thank you very much for coming on the show for the baseball special. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we can have you back here later on in the spring to do a esoteric discussion on UFOs, 9/11, and all that good stuff. Sounds like you have some great opinions, and I definitely want to talk to you again soon, have you back on the show. So
I would be very interested to do that, Tim, absolutely.
Awesome. So we'll have to set something like that up in a few weeks. But like I said, thank you very much for coming on the baseball special. I really appreciated it, and I'm sure the baseball fans and the the listening audience are going to enjoy your opinions on all things baseball. So thank you again for coming back.
My pleasure. I bet you'll have a lot of interested people wanting to hear baseball opinions by UFO geeks like us.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.
We move on now to our next guest here on the BOA Audio Baseball Special. He's batting cleanup here, and that's a good spot for him because he's a power hitter. He's the author of the outstanding book, The Prankster and the Conspiracy, and also The Beast of Adam Gorightly, which is a compiling of his best-of writings. He's also the host of the Untamed Dimensions podcast program. He's prolific. He's been on BOA Audio several times now. He was on in season 1 for just a standard interview, and he was on last year's baseball special, and he's back here this year for the baseball special. He is the crackpot historian himself, Adam Gorightly. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Timmy, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you back. What have you been up to in the last year since the last time we talked to you? What's been going on for Gorightly between baseball opening days?
Well, several different writing projects. I'm about done with a book on James Shelby Downard I might have mentioned to you years ago. I've been working on it for a few years now. He, of course, was the famous conspiracy theorist and author of the King Kill 33 theory, which presented, this theory that the JFK assassination was part of a dastardly Freemasonic conspiracy orchestrated on the 33rd latitude.
Oh, wow. When's that coming out?
Pretty soon. It's basically done. I'm working with a fellow. He's going to write a foreword. The artwork is done for it. I'm kind of shopping it around to a few publishers, but if that doesn't pan out, I'll publish it myself. So hopefully in a few months, we'll see. It'll get published one way or another.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, because I read the Michael Hoffman book, and he had a chapter in there on that 33 King Kill theory, it always resonated with me. I wanted to know more about it. So basically,
Downard and Hoffman were co-authors of that work, King Kill 33.
Is Downard still around, or did he die?
No, he died about 10 years ago, and that was one of the interesting parts of the research. For many years, I really doubted that he actually existed.
Really?
And the deeper I looked into it, the more I doubted even more and more that he ever actually existed. But then I finally chased some leads down and discovered that he did exist. Popular rumor for years was that he was a kind of a composite creation by several different authors like Hoffman and William Grimstead and Adam Parfrey. I think I'd almost convinced myself that that was the case, but then, I got towards the end of the book and I told myself, you got to really find out for sure, if he did or didn't exist. And I was ready even to take a trip out to Memphis to look around, but then I was able to get enough information to convince me that he was actually a living, breathing human being. Quite a fascinating character.
So is the book on him or the King Kill theory, or just the whole, or is it kind of like the Prankster and Conspiracy book where it's kind of like both?
It's kind of a little bit of both. There is biographical background, but, I could only find so much about him through because he, in a sense, was kind of reclusive. He traveled around the country in an Airstream trailer going to paranormal sites and all this type of stuff. And he had a few friends here and a few friends there, and I interviewed like Hoffman and William Grimstead and other people he knew. So, there is some biographical material and stuff that also comes from his books about his early youth growing up as a patsy of Freemasonry, as he described himself. And then I basically take a lot of his theories and run with them, Yeah. Just to compare them with things going on today, like 9/11. So that's kind of the take on the book. And it's a rather, it'll be a slim volume, maybe, I think it weighs out around 30,000 words or so.
Nice. We got to keep me in the loop on that, because I'm fascinated by the King Kill theory, and I definitely want to have you on the show when the book comes out.
I'll get you a copy. Then I want to mention I'm also doing an updated version of my book on the Manson family.
Nice.
Which I hope it damn well better be available by next year, 2009. That's the 40th anniversary. So I want to roll it out for that and sell some more copies. This will have some new information, and it'll be a little leaner and meaner than the first edition, just because that was such a big book, 600 pages, and ended up costing quite a bit. So I'm going to trim it down, make it lean and mean, and throw a few new things in there. So that's coming up. Then
Nice.
on my doorstep today, I got the new edition of Paranoia magazine, which I have an article in co-written with my friend Douglas Haas entitled "The Tuesday Weld Psychedelic Illuminati Conspiracy."
Wild. Yeah, I know we talked about the Tuesday Weld story before. It's really a weird one. There's been a lot going on here in the baseball off season. Is there anything that really stood out to you that we should dive into first? Anything that really piqued your interest? I know you have sort of an askew view of the world, so maybe something I hadn't even thought of yet.
Oh, it's just been a mess with all this, the Roger Clemens circus and, and the Barry Bonds stuff. That's been the most interesting for me during the off season. As far as my team, the Giants, they're looking pretty pathetic. They really haven't done much to improve their lot here in the last few years. They kind of mortgaged their future banking on Barry Bonds to, win a World Series, and that never happened. So the organization itself is kind of in shambles. I was reading somewhere there's some baseball insiders or experts. They rated all the teams in the major leagues, looking at the whole organization from their farm clubs up to the big team, and a lot of these experts placed the Giants as the worst organization in baseball.
Oh, man, that sucks. Wow, even worse than the Florida teams?
Yeah, so we can only go up.
There you go. How did things get so bad for them? Because, you'd think, I just don't understand, how some of these teams can go so far off the rails, but they just invest all the money in bonds?
They did. They were going for the short term, so they traded a lot of their up-and-coming young players to bring in veterans to surround Bonds, and that worked when they made the World Series. And a couple of years after that, they had some good teams, but then they hit a point of diminishing returns, and they ended up with a bunch of quite a few, veterans with not a lot left in the tank. And, towards the end, Bonds didn't have that much either,
Yeah, and it seemed like the Barry Zito signing, he was signed for quite a lot of money, and I don't know how well he really fared last year for the Giants.
He had a pretty lackluster season. He was around 500, I think, in wins, maybe less. And this year he started off slow, I believe, with some of the spring training games, so he hasn't fared too well yet,
Yeah, and that's surprising considering he moved from the American League to the National League. You think he'd do a lot better.
But the bright spots they have, the few bright spots, are some very good young pitching. Matt Cain, he's an up-and-comer, and I see him like a future Nolan Ryan or Roger Clemens. His record last year wasn't that great, but he didn't get a lot of run support. They got another guy named Tim Lipscomb.
Oh, yeah.
He's a good young pitcher. So if they could get some decent position players, but right now they have, their roster, they really have no power hitting, and they have a bunch of old vets that were good 5 or 6 years ago, like Rich Aurelia and Ray Durham, and, Omar Vizquel is still fun to watch, but, yeah, he's no spring chicken.
Yeah, no kidding. From what I kind of saw on the Bonds coverage, it sounds like San Francisco is like the bizarro world where, like, everywhere else he goes, he's pretty hated, but there they still like him a lot. Was that sort of the mood there this past season when he was chasing the record?
Yeah, but then once I think the got the record, then people started care less about him, and he was surprised that they didn't bring him back for another season. But the last season where he broke the record, that was the only reason they brought him back, was to fill the seats, because they knew they would with him chasing and breaking that record.
Yeah. Now, did you get a chance to go to any of those games?
No, I haven't even been to their new stadium, which they've had for several years now. I used to go to a lot of the Candlestick games, so I must admit I haven't. The most recent games, I go out to see the Dodgers play now and then when Greg Bishop will invite me. So, yeah, I hear what I've seen of the new park there in San Francisco. It's wonderful. Just haven't made it yet.
What did you think of the whole Mitchell report and everything and the Clemens circus? You kind of alluded to it already, but what did you think of all that?
Pretty comical. Clemens made himself look like an ass. I don't know what he was expecting he was going to get out of that. It's just a head scratcher, but it was comical. He was parading the flag around and saying pitched for the USA team, and I'm a great hero and all this, and here you are dragging me through the mud, and I'm deep butt.
Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Yeah, it'll all blow away, and we'll move on with things. And it was just a period where, in baseball, where that was going on, and it wasn't just Bonds and Clemens. And of course, Clemens now Bonds looks a hell of a lot better after Clemens made such of an ass of himself. But it was pretty widespread and prevalent. It is what it is. That they people that's turned their heads from the management of baseball, commissioners, whatever. There was some years where they were making a lot of money, and the long ball was going on, and now it's come back to roost.
Now, were you always a Giants fan? Did you grow up in the area and that kind of thing, and became a fan that way?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I'm in Central California, so yeah, Giants fan, and the Niners, and actually big NBA fan, more of a Lakers fan, but I go see Golden State Warriors games now and then, so yeah, I was a big sports fan. Now,
I remember last year, I don't know if I asked you this last year or not, but I know Bishop had a sort of a National League, American League bias where he was anti-DH and all that stuff. How do you feel about that sort of thing, where the comparison, it seems like the National League doesn't get as much respect as the American League because, I don't know why exactly. Maybe because the scores are lower or something. I'm not sure.
I don't mind the DH. It's been around for so long now. You get used to these things when they start bringing in new rules and stuff. A lot of the traditionalists get a little upset, but I was watching baseball as a lad, and it was back in the early 70s with the Oakland A's, and they were real innovative, and it kind of came out of that period with Charlie Finley. That's, when they started, he was the first really owner that allowed his players to wear long hair, and they had these colorful uniforms. I think they even tried these bright orange baseballs, and they were one of the first teams really that started having the night games. So that, that kind of innovation came out of that period. So I grew up with it, and I like the designated hitter. It helps different players extend their careers. Who knows? It might help Bonds extend his career. You never know.
Do you think he'll end up playing again, or you think he's all done?
Well, in fact, that was going to be my first prediction this year, is that Barry Bonds will, mark my words, will make a comeback mid-season. He'll sign with the New York Mets, but then shortly afterwards his head will explode on national television due to his continued use of performance-enhancing drugs.
Wow, that's a bold prediction. I like it, though.
I have another prediction.
Let's hear it.
I predict that Sean David Morton will actually make a prediction this year that comes true. But not only that.
Yeah.
This will be the year of UFO disclosure.
Oh, wow, okay.
But when it happens, nobody will care, except for the 200 or so saucer buffs that go to all these UFO conventions.
What will everybody else do?
They don't care. It's, it's a big deal. there's other things. We got the economy, all these foreclosures to worry about. You know, what can the UFO-nauts do for us?
Oh man! Now, do you have any sort of like rival teams? I know the Giants kind of have a rivalry with the A's, but do you? And I know, of course, with the Bishop thing.
Well, yeah. It's less now with free agencies because the players move back and forth, and on the Giants, you have a bunch of ex-Dodgers and vice versa.
Yeah.
So there's less of it. I remember I really hated the frickin' Dodgers, especially it was like the when was that? Early 90s. Bonds had first come to the team, and the Giants had a great season that year. They won 100 games, and it came down to the last day of the season, and they needed to win the game, and they were playing the Dodgers. And the Dodgers, it went right to the end of the game, the last hit, and the Dodgers won, and Tommy Lasorda, that fat little fuck, was running around, jumping up and down, and I despised him ever since. So I have a hatred for the Dodgers, but it's harder to keep that going these days with all the free agency. It's like you see it going on with the Red Sox and Yankees. The center fielder there from the Red Sox went to the Yankees. I forget his name.
Johnny Damon.
Yeah, so it's not like it used to be.
Yeah. I was reading an interview with Bob Dylan actually, and they asked him something like that about who his favorite baseball player was. He's a big baseball fan too, and he was saying the same thing you are pretty much about free agency. And he said, nowadays you're really just cheering for the uniform.
Right.
That's about the only thing that doesn't change.
Where in the past you had players, they'd spend their whole career on the same team. You very rarely see that anymore.
Yeah, that's one of the really hard parts about baseball and all sports, really, because you get attached to a guy and then their contract comes up and they leave. So it's disappointing.
Yeah.
So you're not really a big Dodgers fan. So how do you feel about Joe Torre coming out there to be the new coach?
Actually, that's pretty cool. I'm glad Torre ended up somewhere. I thought he was a really classy dude, and he'll probably do well with them. The Dodgers look pretty good going into this season, I hate to say. So it's hard for me not to root for Joe Torre, especially all he's gone through working for that asshole, the Steinbrenner and overcoming cancer and all these things. He's always been a class dude,
Yeah.
Win, lose or draw.
Yeah, he was one of the few guys on the Yankees, in the Yankee organization.
That you could stomach?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I didn't mind that much.
Yeah.
The rest of them I could give or take pretty. Let me see. What else could I ask you about here that
You want me to give my predictions for this year?
Yeah, let's just we'll dive into the predictions. So let me go down the list here. Well, for you, since you're National League, we'll start in the National League. So
well, let me say first of all, I gave this a lot of thought about these predictions, and why don't we start with the National League West, and I'll tell you how I came up with my predictions. I started thinking about the Giants, and how they're going to stink again this year.
Yeah.
And, so the Dodgers are looking like one of the teams to beat, in the National League West, but it's against my nature to root for the Dodgers in any shape or form, because I hate them and all they stand for with, like we talked before, the mind control stuff last year and that Greg Bishop's involved in.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I was thinking about these predictions. It seems I never do worth a crap when I try to predict who will win. So, I might as well go with the Giants because that's the logical choice not to go with because, I'm going to pull a George Costanza. You ever see that episode of Seinfeld where he did the opposite?
Yeah, there you
Remember
go.
that? Because he did the opposite of what he would normally do because nothing ever worked out right for him anyway. So, why not do the total opposite? Like when ordering food, instead of a hamburger, get a salad, or instead of beer, get wine, see how it comes out. So that's going to be my approach here. Pick the team least likely to succeed, and then, see if I do better than the other, UFO wackos you've had on predicting who will be the winners and losers this year. So anyway, in the NL West, we'll go with the Giants, and then let's go with the National League East. I have to go with the Florida Marlins. So pencil those in.
All right.
Pencil them in. In the Central, let's go Pittsburgh Pirates were in the hole last year. They had the worst record in the Central, so we'll go with them. So I have in the National League, San Francisco in the West, the Pirates in the Central Division, and Florida in the East.
All right, now what about the wild card?
Oh, shit, I forgot about that. Let's go with the Washington. What do they call themselves? Not the Senators.
The Nationals.
The Nationals. We'll go with the Washington Nationals in the wild card.
Wow, so it's like a whole black sheep contingent here of teams. I like it.
You watch this. One of these teams is going to come out of there and we'll go, man, that Go Rightly, he's a genius.
All right, now the American League.
American League East, the Baltimore Orioles.
All right, there you go.
Fuck Boston and New York. The Central, Minnesota was kind of in the middle of the pack. I have a feeling about them. We'll go with the Minnesota Twins. They actually were around 500 last year, so. And then what do we look in the American League West? Texas Rangers.
Wow. All right, that's bold. Okay, and then the wild card.
Let's go with Toronto.
All right, nice. Okay, you may sneak that one in though. The Toronto, that one may turn out to be the correct prediction. They're a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who do you see facing off for the championship here, the American League versus National League? Who's going to win their respective league championships?
In the World Series, we'll have the Texas Rangers against the San Francisco Giants, and the Giants will prevail. Nice. Okay. Seven-game series.
I hope so. That would be nice. Too many sweeps nowadays. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Way too many sweeps. Last year's postseason only saw like maybe one series go to 7. And that was the Red Sox Cleveland one, which is disappointing because you want to enjoy the playoff games, and you only get 4 of them. Sometimes you only get 3 for the first round. So you miss 1 or 2 of them. Next thing you know, you miss the whole Cubs playoff run.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it. Who was predicting Colorado to be in the World Series last year, or in the division championships?
Nobody.
Or did they make the World Series?
They did make the World Series. Yeah.
They got swept in 4, right?
Yeah.
Who the hell were predicting them? They just got on a roll. So.
Exactly. So there's a chance here for the Giants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now you already talked about your hatred for Tommy Lasorda. Did you manage to see that he got to manage a game here in the springtime recently?
Yeah, I heard a bit about that, and they had a lot of big fanfare for him, and I guess they crossed their bats, and he ran across from third to home plate. I guess they split squads, and one was playing in Japan or something. So
China or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, was that crossed bats some kind of symbolic occult reference, you think?
I think so. We've talked about this before. He's deep into all that mind control, Illuminati, One World Order, L.A. Dodgers stuff.
That might explain how they got Joe Torre then.
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of power brokering going on there.
Yeah, exactly what's going on with him.
What do you have coming up down the line? I know you're intimately involved here with the UFO Retro, so the UFO RetroCon. Talk a little bit about that and what else you have coming up, that you want to mention, maybe other speaking engagements, stuff like that, that people should be made aware of.
Yeah, that's the main thing coming up. Retro UFO, April 26th and 27th in Landers, California, at the world-famous Integratron. And, you can join myself and whole bunch of cool people. Greg Bishop will be there, Barbara Lamb, Nick Redfern, Ralph Ring, Chica Bruce, Paul Kimball, Guy Malone, the list goes on and on, Ken Thomas, even Zamora the Torture King, to name but a few, in what has been billed as not your typical UFO convention. And, people can go to retroufo.com. Originally, I was slated to speak there, and I've been helping bring in some of the speakers for this event, and we really ended up overbooking, so I kind of pulled myself out as far as speaking, but I will be actually performing some music there with my friend Joe Hook, and we have about 6-7 songs we're going to play, various wacky UFO songs. I'm going to bust out the theremin, and for this gig, we've actually formed a band, and we're calling ourselves Good News for Modern Man.
Nice, nice. I didn't know you were a musician. What do you play?
I play keyboards.
Nice.
And, there'll be some cool stuff going on. Of course, if your listeners don't know the background, it's at the Integratron, which, they could go to the Integratron.com and find out more about that freaky structure. But, the whole idea behind this conference, Retro, is kind of looking back at some of the great conferences they had out there at Giant Rock, which is a couple miles from the Integratron, back in the early 50s through the 70s, when George Van Tassel, who channeled some aliens, and that's why he built the Integratron as a sort of alien rejuvenation chamber, and part of that, to help fund his various projects, he started having these UFO conferences back in the day, and you'd have all those legendary contactees, George Adamski and George Hunt Williamson, and on, showing up at these, they call them the spacecraft conventions and Giant Rock spacecraft conventions. And at the height of that, you'd get 5,000 to 7,000 people out at these things,
wow,
which is mind-blowing. Think of a regular UFO convention today. Get a couple hundred people, you're happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is out in the middle of the desert, so there's not a lot of creature comforts out there.
Yeah. Wow, so you guys kind of like carrying on the tradition here, reviving the Integratron as a conference location, huh?
Mm-hmm. And, there'll be, there's not an organized trip out to Giant Rock, but, the way we're setting it up, basically we'll have Robert Short, who's one of the old school contactees. He's going to be going out at a certain time, so if you want to meet Bob out there, carpool, and he'll show you around Giant Rock. And then the main speakers and different performers, that'll all be going on there at the Integratron.
Before we wrap it up, talk about your podcast, because I think it just started, within the last year or so. I don't even remember if you had it up and running last time you were on the show. So tell people about the podcast and where they can find out about that and stuff and listen to it.
Let me think. I started it November of 2006.
Oh, wow, yeah. So about 6 months before you came on last time for the baseball show.
Yeah, and I've probably done about 40 or 50 episodes. I was amazed the other day. I was going back and, looking at all the interviews I've done, quite a few now. The original intent when I started doing that was basically to interview a lot of people I always wanted to talk to about some strange experiences they've had, whether UFO sightings, paranormal stuff, and basically create a forum where I could interview a lot of people that I'd always wanted to interview and use a lot of this material for a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I still plan to do that, and I'd probably call it Untamed Dimensions, and it'd be some of my own personal experiences and the experiences of these folks,
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the main intent. Somewhere along the line, occasionally, I think I lost focus of that, and which is okay. And I'd have different people approaching me to be on the show, so I started interviewing people that might not necessarily fit the MO of someone I wanted to interview. I knew that had strange experiences, but that's okay. So, and I've had a lot of interesting folks recently. I another one of those people. I got sent a book by some PR group that representing the astronaut Edgar Mitchell. And they did a reissue of his book, The Way of the Explorer.
Mm-hmm.
So I replied back, hey, I'd love to have him as a guest on my show. And what do you know? Interviewing a ex-astronaut, which was pretty cool.
That's cool.
That was a recent one. So, and then I've explored a lot of strange areas. It's like this whole Tuesday Well, the Illuminati conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
That turned into a multi-part show interviewing the characters, and I do mean characters who, were promulgating these theories. And so, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I kind of look at it as a, education, learning experience.
Nice.
And I don't know how long I intend to continue doing it. We'll see. One thing, I get a lot of comments about the audio quality of the show. I get a lot of positive stuff about great guests and all this type of stuff, but the audio quality isn't the greatest. So I think at some point here in the near future, I will probably take a break. It might be an extended one, and kind of regroup and get it set up so the show has better audio quality and these type of things. I found also that it kind of has taken away from my writing.
Yeah.
Because it does take time. It's not okay. You just do an interview and it's an hour out of maybe once a week. There's the prep that goes with it. I'm sure you're aware of all of this, the scheduling of the thing, all these the editing afterwards. All of these things take time, which take time away from other things, and maybe I don't want to spend as much time doing the web radio show as I should be doing whatever, writing, playing music. It's all,
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Choices you make.
Yep.
But I've enjoyed it. It's been a hell of a lot of fun.
Well, Adam, I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show for the baseball special. I really appreciate it. I think I'll probably look at the the actual content. Maybe we talk more about paranormal than baseball, but that's fine because we need to pump up the paranormal content a little bit.
Right on, and we'll have you on my show here sometime in the near future, right?
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to do it. It would be a lot of fun. And keep me, like I said, keep me in the loop on both those books because I've become really fascinated with the Manson family lately, and I've been looking for a good book on the Manson family. I didn't have a copy of your book, so but I guess I'll wait till the new reissue comes out. Otherwise, I would be, I'd be behind the curve. So
hey, I'll get you a copy of both.
Nice, and we'll definitely do an interview on that because I've been really fascinated with the Manson story for quite a while now, and I wanted to delve into it. So, and a lot of people want to hear you back on Binnall of America. I've got a lot of requests to get you back on the show. So it's only a matter of time before we reconnect again for another esoteric discussion.
Right on.
You're listening to Binnall of America Audio.